Members, the question is that the motion be agreed to.
Mr Speaker.
I call Carmel Sepuloni.
Mr Speaker, kia orana, whakalofalahi atu and tā aloha ni. It is a privilege to speak on the third reading of this bill, and Mr Speaker, I want to acknowledge all of our Cook Island, Niue and Tokelau New Zealand residents living in New Zealand, and all of our Tokelau, Cook Island and Niue people living in the realm countries, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, we come here today all in support of this bill with one minor or not so minor point that we disagree with. Mr Speaker, listening to the Minister, there was much of what she said that I agreed with. Some of what she said I thought, hang on a second, that's not actually correct, Minister. One of the points she raised was that all New Zealanders must meet the 5 over 50 rule in terms of 5 years spent in New Zealand over 50, regardless of where they live, Mr Speaker, to be able to access their superannuation. Now we know, and this has been put forward through an SOP, that actually there are countries where we have a reciprocal pension agreement, countries like Australia, UK and Netherlands, where actually they can access their pension there without having to spend 5 years in New Zealand between the age of 50 and 65. And what we're asking for, or what we have been asking for alongside New Zealand First, is that that same exemption be given to these 3 countries who have a special constitutional relationship with New Zealand. And Mr Speaker, actually, if any citizens were going to be exempt from that 5-year rule, it should be the 3 countries that are actually part of the realm of New Zealand. So to hear the Minister go on and say there is no justification or rationale for an exemption, well actually, Mr Speaker, I think that that is incorrect, and the submissions that we received from people like the Prime Minister of the Cook Islands, the Premier of Niue, actually should have been enough to persuade the national government, to convince them that actually an exemption was warranted in this particular case. Mr Speaker, many of us of Pacific descent in this House have an understanding for the importance of returning back to the Pacific country that we came from. I myself have a father who was born and raised in Samoa, who in his later years now has gone back to Samoa to invest in the land, to renew the plantation and keep people working on that plantation. And Mr Speaker, it's made a huge difference to our family over there in terms of, here's this plantation that was not touched for almost 30 years, and now there is this whole family that have found this renewed interest in the land that had been left to itself for just such a long period of time. Now, Niue, the Cook Islands and Tokelau have the same possibilities, and we have an opportunity here to support these citizens to return to those countries, to invest in their own countries, to contribute to the economic development. And for the Minister to say that that investment can start at 55, or that investment can start in those years, but they must still spend 5 years here between the age of 50 and 65, well, actually, that's not good enough, Mr Speaker, because one of the biggest issues that we've been told about by these countries is that we have depleted them of their major resource. Their major resource, Mr Speaker, that being their people. Now, we look at places like Niue, which now have a population of something like 1,200 people. How can they develop their economy with 1,200 people when, Mr Speaker, we have 24,000 of their people in this country? 24,000 of their people who have contributed to this country, not only to our workforce, to our sports fields, to our academic credentials, but also, Mr Speaker, and I think this is really important to point out, also serving under the New Zealand flag alongside our military, Mr Speaker, alongside us at war. And yet, Mr Speaker, we have a minister, we have a national government who can't give that one exemption that was asked for, that being exempt them from the 5-year rule between the age of 50 and 65. Now, if we had had agreement on that one small point, I think we'd all be celebrating in the House today. We'd have consensus here, and actually we would be happy with each other. But when we walk out of the door today, we go and talk to our Niue, Tokelau and Cook Island community. Yes, we can say that we have made some arrangement so that the portability has increased for them, that they can go back earlier, that they can contribute, but not to the extent that we think we should have, Mr. Speaker. So if that side of the House, let me just say, that side of the House needs to know that when we walk out of this door, we will be saying to our Cook Island, Niue and Tokelau communities that yes, there was consensus overall for the bill, but we were disappointed, Labor were disappointed, that National could not understand the rationale or see the justification for exempting our 3 realm countries from that one rule that would allow them to spend 15 of their years between the age of 50 and 65 back in their homelands, that one rule that would have allowed them 5 additional years between that age group to contribute to the economic development of their own country, that National would not agree that the historical and constitutional ties we have with those 3 countries were enough to actually warrant an exemption, Mr. Speaker. So we will be going out there and voicing that to our community. And actually, already I did see that my colleague, Portal Williams, did put something up on social media, and the reaction she got from the Cook Island community about the fact that the one Cook Island MP in the National Party, that he could not convince his National Party colleagues to support that one exemption was actually there was a lot, let's just say, they were outraged that it had happened. And you know, we know, regardless of whatever ethnicity we are, that there are ideologies, philosophies and ways of thinking in different political parties. And this is one of those examples where actually the rest of our community get to see that that exists regardless of ethnicity, that there's a philosophy and ideology that comes with an individual depending on which political party they are in. And that has proven itself today and with this whole discussion around the bill. Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure actually if I have more to contribute to this discussion. The point I wanted to make today was actually, yes, we are happy to support this bill. We are disappointed with the National Government that they didn't understand the rationale for exempting Niue, Tokelau and the Cook Islands from the 5-year rule. We will be letting our community know that that was the case, but in the very least, this is a step forward. It is a step towards recognising the special relationship we have with the 3 realm countries. And Mr. Speaker, I will end on a positive note and say, in the very least, that is a good thing. Thank you.
I call Stuart.